Welcome to Ortho Analytica. This is the podcast of Father Anthony Perkins, a priest, seminary professor, retired military intelligence warrant officer, and politologist. Enjoy the show.
I think we need to have a class on canon law.
Canon law. Canon law it is. All right, yes, let's talk about the, what did you call it? Trigamy? The canonical trigamy.
Yeah, that was it. There's
All right.
dietry, there's diatrism, and trigonometry.
Trigonometry. I told you.
That's right.
All right, so do you remember tangent equals sine over cosine? Sine equals opposite over hypotenuse?
Some old horse caught another horse took
Like
it
you
away.
got calculator.
Say it again.
Some old horse caught another horse took it away.
Do you remember your unit circle too? No.
It's a question. Who has 3 wives?
3 wives?
Trigger me.
Yes. So our brother Subdeacon Scott, he's going through the Antiochian House of Studies, and he has found out that there is one hurdle that is going to be challenging him, and that is canon law. And so it's talking about things like how should marriage be handled, how should remarriage be handled, and it gets really messy, right? Because what counts as a marriage? Have y'all ever thought about that? What counts as a marriage? What do I mean by that? Okay, so obviously what we did on Sunday, that counts as a marriage. That was a crowning, right? Martha and Isaac are crowned. That is what Subdeacon Scott was calling earlier a lawful marriage, right? What about y'all's marriage? Y'all have been crowned.
We do need to get crowned over.
Well, that's one of those things. It's by coming to communion together, the church blessed your marriage. Okay? So it's a marriage. But in general, what if somebody doesn't know that you shouldn't get married more than once? I mean, it's not really something in our world that's being taught, is it? No.
So, for example, what if I all of a sudden had the desire to become part of the clergy? Would I be, because I've already been divorced in my past life before I came to the church.
Right, so the bishops, let me tell you how the math works. You could do what some men do, and you shop for a bishop that's willing to kind of give grace to that, right? But the answer is complicated, right? Does that count as a marriage? It was before you were Orthodox, right? Okay, and I'm going to be, this is going on the internet, so I shouldn't be perfectly honest, but I'm going to be, right? The bishops are allowed to, they're responsible for the health of the church. And so what they weigh is how much do I need someone, right? And as I was talking with Alexander earlier, there are times and places where the need is so great that they will dip low into the barrel and ordain someone like Douglas Anthony Perkins. Right?
Wow.
But you can imagine other times and places where they're like, no, we have enough saints to choose from. Right? So it really is, we give ourselves to the church and let it discern what we're called to do. Yeah.
But to that, so to that same thing, because I'm in the same boat. I've been divorced before, and but I've only had one marriage that actually took place in the church, and that wasn't an Orthodox church,
right?
So
I know. Look, it's messy.
Of course, we're looking forward to a crowning.
That'll be beautiful. That'll be beautiful. Your new life when you're brought into Holy Orthodoxy. Yes. Now, I tell you, just having that I love studying culture and watching how things change. When I was coming in the 90s, the rigorists were all about the old calendar. That was the thing. That was the hill that they would die on, and that they insisted other people should die on. They were willing to kill people. No, they weren't. So the old calendar was the big one. And for a while now, it's been baptism, right? How to bring people into the church who have been baptized. Is it chrismation? Is it confession? Is it baptism? What? And now there's more of a conversation than I've ever seen about crowning. And, again, it's up to the bishop, because canon law is going to allow for a range of possibilities. It is the case that in the early church, you would get married, like legally, and you would bring your union to the church to be blessed by taking communion. Okay? So, there you go. Don't get wrapped around the axle about it. Okay? People have been saved. I did get crowned. It was on it was in 2002, which would have made it our 12th anniversary. And it was because the bishop said, you're called to the priesthood, and I just don't want there to be any question. So, but whatever. I hope y'all hear me. I'm a man under authority. Father Harry and I drove people crazy in our most recent Made to Be a Kingdom podcast for Ancient Faith. Somebody asked us to talk about women in the church and head coverings. And y'all, I've read enough, I've studied enough to know that, quoting St. Paul, all things, the whole range, is possible for me. All things are lawful, right? But what are we looking for, Danny? When there are a lot of possibilities that can be justified, what do we look for? Profitability. But not all things are profitable, right? As Americans, we understand that. Where's the money? No, we're not talking about money. Right, so for the bishop is the one who has to figure out what is beneficial for my people in this time and place. And so, Father Harry, he's very smart. He's read so much, and he remembers almost everything. And so he's given all this, history and things. And I'm like, the only thing I said, and I said it probably about 10 times, was, it's the bishop who decides this, right? And I'm going to go further. I'm going to follow C.S. Lewis in Screwtape Letters, who was riffing on St. Paul, that if you prefer to be in a parish where head coverings are required, you should probably attend a parish where they're not. And if you can't stand head coverings, you should probably attend a parish where they're required. And here's what would happen to you spiritually. At first, because when we disagree about something, we tend to notice the negatives to justify our own position. So if let's say you're against, you are for, you think every woman should have to cover her head, right? What you'll be tempted to do is, if you go to a parish where that's not done, is you'll notice, just how immoral those women are, right? Did you see? And it's not because the data is there necessarily. It's because when your eye is full of darkness, how is great is the darkness. We lack charity towards people with whom we disagree, right? And then what would happen is, as you worship together, you see people more truly, right? And say, oh, okay. And the same goes the other way, right? Oh, these people covering their heads, they're just, handmaidens or whatever, right? And then you'll chill out and say, oh, okay, I can see how this helps. Anyways, in a world where bishops have different preferences, who am I? Who are you to say that it should be done a certain way in a parish that you're a part of? Really? I mean, honestly, be careful. Be careful. Now, people self-select, right? And so, they'll find a parish where it meets their politics, it meets all that. But I honestly believe that we are better served by being in a place where we're at least a little bit uncomfortable. Okay. All right. Which is, I was going to say, which is how I ended up in the Antiochian Orthodox Church. That's not true. That's not true. I love it here. All right. So today we are switching into it. We're going into a new section in Zachary Porchu's book, Journey to Reality. This is the section on sacramentalism. And let me tell you, if you're interested at all in this subject, the two books, the big book, the Orthodox book, is For the Life of the World by Alexander Schmemann. Have you read that one, Danny?
Yes.
Yeah. Life-changing, right? Yeah. Because he's doing this thing. He's saying, look, we've got a problem where we're stuck in this secular way of understanding orthodoxy as religion, and we've got to shift out of that. So, he plays uses some metaphors and stuff to try and pull us out of that. The other one is The Abolition of Man.
Have that in front of me.
Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis.
Chapter, that's what I thought of.
And he doesn't call it on the sacramental life the way Schmemann or Porchu do,
Yeah.
right? But because he's talking about the arche, the Tao, that's what he's doing. So both of those books are short, and both of them are available on audio. Okay, I do not
Life
get.
of the World's a little less accessible. It can be kind of hard to read at times.
Right, it's like 70 years old.
Yeah, it's 1963, I think, was written. So.
Yeah. Okay, so 62. We're studying that in OCF right now. All right, but Zachary, he has a good handle on it. He's presenting it to us. Did y'all go over electricity last week? Did you hit that? Cool, right? I get electricity. All right, so today we're going to do chapter 5, Sacramental Thinking. And here is the framing verse for you from Christ's words in John 14, 1 through 7, St. John. Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it weren't so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. And whither I go, ye know, and whither I go, ye know, and the way ye know. Sorry about the old English. Thomas saith unto him, Lord, we know not whither thou goest, and how can we know the way? And then here's the payoff. Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. If ye had known me, ye should have known my Father also. And from henceforth you know him and have seen him. Right? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, here is what St. Basil the Great has to say about that very same verse. We understand the way to be the road to perfection, advancing in order, step by step, through the words of righteousness and the illumination of knowledge, always yearning for that which lies ahead and straining toward the last mile until we reach that blessed end, the knowledge of God, with which the Lord blesses those who believe in him. For truly our Lord is a good way, a straight road with no confusing forks or turns, leading us directly to the Father. For no one comes to the Father, he says, except through me. Such is our way up to God through his Son. Now, how do y'all feel about that? You ever run into, as a Christian, you ever run into any, forks and any hard turns, hairpin turns, or anything like that? Feels like it sometimes, doesn't it? Feels like it. But the point isn't that it's easy. The point is that it's straight. And some of the things that we get wrapped around, y'all know this term, wrapped around the axle? It's an awesome term, right? Think about an axle, right? You get wrapped around the axle, right? You don't want to do that. But we get all anxious about things that don't have eternal significance. Okay. I work with a lot of, over the years, a lot of men trying to discern whether they're called to the priesthood, right? and with their wives, right? The vow of poverty. I didn't make this vow of poverty when I married you. Right? No, but I mean, and they have a lot of anxiety about it. And you're like, look, the most important your decisions in your life have been made. You've given your life to Christ. You're married. The other stuff is, important, right, day to day, but it's not in relative sense. And you got it. You got it. All right. And I always tell, well, it doesn't matter what I tell. All right, let's go on to the book. Okay. So that's St. Basil the Great. Here I want to share with you a quote to bring us into Zachary's book. Modern, westernized people, that's us, tend to think about the world from the starting point of physicality, the physical world, as we would say, as the primary reality. It is the objective, measurable world on which we can all agree. Okay. Y'all buy that? This is certainly the thing we all have in common, right? It's real, right? And the challenge of, and there are benefits that accrue from this, by the way, because we're really good at measuring and manipulating this, right? But what are the downsides? The downside is that there's also the assumption that ends up being built into our culture. That is, if a thing cannot be measured, then it is unprovable. It is a matter of opinion and therefore of lesser importance. Okay? Have y'all seen that? Right? And do we argue about opinions? Yeah, but only as kind of an entertainment, right? Football teams, pizza. Who likes pineapple on pizza? Pineapple and ham? Love it. Love it. No, heresy. I know. You thought, I know, just totally. There's another parish up the road where the priest is a little more rigorous in terms of his pizza preferences.
That's the unpopular thing.
Oh, all right. The natural world ends up being everyone's baseline. Religious or spiritual people like us, we have an added category, and we call that category, you can call it supernatural. You got the natural, and then you got the supernatural. Right? But as long as we operate within the material paradigm or worldview, the things, the supernatural, the spiritual things, are the things that by definition cannot be measured and are thus kind of optional. So belief, right? Believe and be saved, right? Things like this then becomes a way to stand up and assert there are some things that are important that cannot be measured. I believe becomes our assertion that there is a supernatural reality and that it is well ordered and that there are supernatural outcomes that should matter to us. Okay? So things that you can't measure, but that matter. So we would say, I believe that I need the forgiveness of sins. Right? That's what we just did. We did the service of repentance. Why? Okay, psychological balm. Okay, that's what the materialists would say. And you can have an atheist as a chaplain. Did you know that? Did you know there are atheist chaplains? You can have an atheist as your therapist. And they will want, if they're good, they'll want to know what your belief system is. Why? And they'll encourage you to, if you're a Christian, to go to church, right? To pray and stuff. Why would they do that? Because it's all therapy to them. It's measurable. If you get somebody to have confidence in something, it'll allay their fears. So for them, it's still completely materialistic. It's a placebo effect. It's real. Placebo works for them, go ahead and take a sugar pill. Okay. But when we say we believe, we end up in this world, this Western world, of asserting our will against that and saying forgiveness of sins matters. We were just talking about marriage. Sacramental marriage matters, right? I don't mean crowning versus non-crowning. I mean what y'all have, right? rather than just an agreement or a contract to live with somebody or to share your life, right? There's a difference. And it's not just a difference that's measurable to psychologists, right? That you're more in because Orthodoxy gave you a long service to sit through, right? That's one of the jokes, by the way, is, man, I'm never going through that again. Especially if you do them in the summer with no air conditioning, right? How did your marriage last? You should have seen our wedding. Not going through that again. Another thing, right, that we assert is real, though we can't measure it, and we impose our will upon, is the importance of living right so that we can have eternal life, an eternal life of blessedness, right? Can you measure it? Can you prove it? No. We assert it. I believe, right? Despite the evidence. And even us, when we talk about religion, it's often in materialist terms. So it's not just therapists, and psychologists who do this. We do it ourselves. What good is it? So why do you go to church? A friend might say, right? What's the answer that we often give? Because I feel loved, right? It's good for me. I believe that church is good for my family. I want my kids to go, right? I've done the math. I've studied the sociology. It helps, right? It's not deterministic, but it helps. All right. It's good for society, right? This is something that I've heard atheists argue. They're like, no, I can't convince myself to believe, but I sure am thankful that most people in America do, right? Because without it, y'all, if I weren't religious, if I weren't a Christian, I'd be a mad scientist. I'd be so manipulative. Because why
If I
not?
was going down the dark alley and somebody had to say, would you rather meet a group of atheists or a group of Christians? I mean, I'm going to pick a group of Christians.
Right.
Because I don't know really what to expect from the atheists. You know what I mean?
Could be anything.
I'm not saying they're not going to be good people. I'm not saying all just
Yes.
There could be morally good atheists out there. There
There are.
very more
Right.
better than I am.
Yes.
Morally good. But I'm just saying, I'm going to take the side of the Christian because at least I know they have some kind of framework.
Right.
Generally, they're probably not going to mug me.
And if they do, they're going against something that they
have
say
some
they
kind of
believe.
transcendental rule that says you shouldn't mug people.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, plus the Pentecostals,
So another thing that when we talk about religion in our materialist world, some other ways that we talk about it is, what does it cost? We don't use the word, that's crass, talking about religion, but do you know how much time Father wants us to be in church? Right? Did you hear him talking about tithing? Are you kidding me? How much does it cost in terms of time and money? And then you weigh that against the benefits, right? That's huge for us, right? It's huge. And then also, does the system make sense? And y'all have been through this. Some of you are doing it right now. You're inquirers. I don't know if they're inquirers. I think everybody here is either a catechumen or Orthodox. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So you had to figure out, does this system make sense? Right? And so you look at it, and because many of you, there was a push. There was something that pushed you out of your old system, right? You're like, this double darned predestination, I can't stand it, right? There's got to be a better way. Or judicial versus therapeutic versus holistic, right? Healing. This is one of the things that some people say attracted them to Orthodoxy, is that we're not as judicial in our thinking about sin, right? Okay. That's fine. But this kind of analysis is only going to take us so far. It misses the mark. And what am I playing with there? What's missed the mark? Sin, right? It's sinful, right? It's sinful in the real sense, not the sinful in the way that we've been taught to think about sin. Okay? It's sinful in the sense that there's a certain way that we should be thinking and living, and this doesn't get us there, right? When it comes to understanding the world and how it works. Now, here's an irony. I'm going to play with an idea, and y'all may go to sleep. I'll wake you up in a few minutes, okay? One of the things that we're trying to do is see the world as it is, right? And the argument is that I'm presenting, that Zachary's presenting, like he's my best friend, Dr. Porchu is presenting, is that our secular worldview doesn't allow us to be good Christians. It doesn't allow us to see things as they really are. Okay, so we add a Christian filter or words to our secular worldview, but until we change the way we think and we see things, we're still going to be, our vision is still going to be polluted. Okay, and the materialist worldview, however, have you heard of the term objectively? Right? The goal is objectivity. Yeah, objectivity. Objectivity, what does this mean?
Unbiased.
Yeah, it means unbiased, right? Refers to the quality of being unbiased and fair, making decisions based solely on facts rather than personal feelings or beliefs. It is often considered essential in fields like science and journalism to ensure accurate and impartial reporting or analysis. Objectivity.
The Great War ended that.
Say again?
The Great War ended that. World War II, World War I, kind of ended that.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
I think we just didn't do the data right. How about that?
Yeah, well, like, you have the postmodern, like,
No, I get it.
scientists,
Yes.
philosophers, the
Right.
philosophes that came along in the 60s with the post-structuralists, Foucault,
Mhm.
and it's all in response to, our whole Enlightenment project of objectivity and faith in human reason, objective human reason.
Oh.
And that led us to destroy.
But here's the thing.
You know what I mean?
So
Germany was the-
we are so
the Enlightenment.
postmodernist that we're back to being objectivist again. Let me describe. See if you buy this.
Yeah,
Okay. So going back to that way of thinking, kind of Newtonian way of the objects and that you can measure everything and so on. And by the way, I wasn't kidding about. We just didn't measure things well enough. The program I came out of, one of the best programs in political science in the nation, that's the approach. Okay, more on that in a minute. Okay, so,
Objectivity.
yeah, well, how about if you wait until I cover it and then we can.
Sorry for messing.
No, you're good. You're good. Okay, so the irony here is that materialism can allow you to see things objectively. Like you really can measure this so well that you could create another thing just like it, right? And everyone would agree that you had made a perfect copy. Yes? Okay. You can do that with structures. You can do it with engineering. All of these things. Okay. But the thing is, in doing that, the key to the problem is found in the word itself, object. Right? I turn everything into an object. Right? And assume that its most important properties are the things that can be measured. Right? And I told you before that as a social scientist, that's how we studied people, right? Is that we would figure out what the critical variables were in explaining a certain phenomenon, like voting or something. You collect data on all those variables, and then you explain elections. Okay? All right. Yeah. It can work. It can work. But it's not enough. Because things are not objects only. Okay. Now, let me keep going, and then you could have your questions, because I'm sure I won't address them all. Okay. So objects have attributes that can be measured. And as a social scientist, I was taught that we have a poor understanding of something if we cannot put a number to it. And that if we took enough measurements, we could explain everything. Omniscience, divine knowledge, Godhood, then is a matter of having enough data and the computing power to run the numbers. Okay? Do y'all see the dots the thing that I'm pointing towards? Y'all have heard of big data, right? You understand the promise of AI and putting dots together, doing computations. Omniscience of a sort, right? Omniscience of a fallen sort. And then omnipotence then involves the ability to manipulate everything towards a desired outcome. Right? So once I have access to how things work, then I gain access to how to manipulate it in a way to get the desired outcome. Okay? This used to be this is what I grew up in science fiction, reading in science fiction. Okay?
Do we see things just as objects or objects?
We are far too close to getting there. Yes, because that's the way that totalitarians treat people.
Well, don't we do that in a way when we go into a restaurant or
Yes.
order something and we don't care about the person standing
Yes.
there and we're just like, I need you to do
It's
this.
built into our system.
Get angry with them because they don't
Yep.
jump fast enough.
Yep.
And
We don't recognize that meals are more than getting what I want from the kitchen. Right? Okay, that's where we're headed. That's where we're headed. All right. So this is another one of those areas where claims are being made for technology that should not be made. I was kind of making fun of double predestination? Am I getting the word right? Okay. But isn't that what people are looking to do through big data, AI, and the manipulation of the information sphere? Aren't they trying? Can't you decide then who the winners and the losers are? The answer is yes. Yes. Okay. A step in the right direction out of this is that there, and then I'll take your question because I think I'll either deal with it now or I'll have forgotten to deal with it in my talk. A step in the right direction is to recognize that there's a moral dimension to the world. That's a good step. But the problem is that morality can't be measured. Outcomes can be measured, but their values can only be asserted. This is why both secular philosophers like Nietzsche and religious ones like C.S. Lewis and Father Seraphim Rose claim that this kind of worldview leads to nihilism and the assertion of will. Right? I can't tell you how frustrating it was. The first time I went through graduate school, I was younger, right? And studying things in this way, it was fun, right? But then when I went back and I was a priest and had been Orthodox for a while, so I thought about things in a different way, right? What I saw happening was that the first time I went through, the arguments would really be about how to measure things the best, right? And the questions of why and things, those were over beer. Okay, those were not part of the class. When I went back, it was baked in. They knew the world that they wanted, not everyone, but that they wanted to see happen. And it was baked into the analysis, right? And when you would say, where do these values come from? These are baked in. These were never subject to any kind of scholarly review. They look at you like you're, a racist or, a fascist or whatever it is, inconvenient.
True taste of the statistics.
It was crazy.
Or an old white man.
That's what we got called, isn't it, Danny? Yeah. So it was very frustrating because I knew that the most important question was the value question, right? And they were asserting values that they had not really considered.
And were you believing in dividing those things, at least initially?
Yes.
Making those things distinct?
Oh, yes. I'm willing to operate as if.
Right. Let's objectively pursue this discipline.
Yeah.
But at the same time, should we at least recognize, we always have some bias, right? But we should pursue objectivity.
Yes.
And I'm not against that either. I guess just recognizing that we're never without some bias.
But and one of the challenges in academia was that there were so few conservatives.
Well, and And they're
that,
trying to bake in bias because they presume bias is already there. So let's just make it the thing.
right.
Rather than saying
They don't even feel it as bias because they never question it,
no, that's the weird thing.
right? And then when you say, look, this is debatable. This thing that you asserted here as given, historically, has not been so. I don't know. Do you want examples? This is probably pretty boring for y'all. But
Thomas Kuhn, what does he say? That's the big thing, right? That people so debate over. And this is hard science.
right.
This is not even soft science.
Yes.
Sorry to call your discipline soft science.
No, it's not.
But this is hard science.
Right.
And he said,
And even there,
scientists' answer have some bias in it.
Yes.
He's not saying we should just jettison
systematic bias, not a moral bias.
Yeah.
Right.
That's,
In the case of social science, now it was moral bias. It really was.
Yeah.
It was the assumption. Well, let me give you an example. We're not going to develop it.
it's fine.
But 30 years ago, when I went through, when you studied inequalities and you studied power, you did it like that, right? Now you use racism, and by definition, there was no word that they used for racism by a group that was out of power towards a group that was empowered. By definition, it couldn't be racism. It might be something else, but they really weren't interested in that. Me, I'm interested in, hey, why do people think weird things? Right? But
You keep referring to biases, is that the same thing as like perceptions?
yes, it's seeing things systematically wrong. I guess some biases could lead you towards the truth. And I've told you that's Kentucky windage. Remember I told you that if you're, to always err on the side of giving the people you don't like a little bit of charity, right? Because your bias is going to be to the opposite. All right, let's go back to objectivity. Okay, so this is a step in the right direction, is seeing that there's a moral dimension to the world. And again, you can measure outcomes, but you can't just assume that everybody agrees that an outcome is good or bad. It's not obvious. And this is a wonderful point that Porchy makes. He says that in the materialist worldview, objects have properties, but they don't have meaning. So water boils at a certain temperature, 100 degrees centigrade. What is it in Fahrenheit? 325? 100 degrees centigrade. Okay, freezes at 0 centigrade, right? But that doesn't mean anything, right? It means when it turns to a solid or when it turns to a gas. But it doesn't have any meaning. Okay. It's not right. So religious and spiritual people who believe in the supernatural will then say that God or spirit or arche is the solution to this problem. Again, this gets us heading in the right direction. So admitting that there's a moral dimension to things that need to at least be talked about and addressed is important. Another is when we recognize, hey, there's a missing thing here. There's a source of morality. There's a source of meaning that we call God or arche or spirit or something, right? And again, this gets us heading in a good direction. But it usually keeps us within a materialist worldview. Okay, so how does that work? When we start trying to figure out what God wants, it almost always ends up matching what it is that we prefer, right? Because we haven't really changed the way that we think. We just add a different word to our vocabulary. But at least it got us to admit that there's a need for moral understanding and that God should play a role and does play a role somehow. But it really is strange to come at God in this manner. Have you heard of God of the gaps? Okay, so give me a summary of God of the gaps.
If we don't know how to explain something, we put God into it and he explains anything.
Yeah. So I don't understand how lightning works, so Thor. Right? Okay. Isn't that what we just did? I've got this hole. I don't know where morality comes from. So I'm going to call it God. Right? It's just another God of the gaps. And the God of the gaps is never a God that you should accept. Our God is not a God of the gaps, because that's what atheists think. They think that now the gaps have decreased so much that there's no need for God. Right? That if you just knew how to measure stuff, if you could just collect better data and run better analysis, you could figure everything out. What's the need for God then? There's nothing that's unexplained. Yeah? Okay.
It's like a just add water Gnosticism almost.
Yeah, but we can...
all there is for us to know stuff. There's like not even any sort of reference to the fact.
Well, at least, Gnosticism, at least we're looking for meaning. Some kind of, right? We think that, what I can measure is all that means anything. And we have the potential to be able to measure and describe and even predict everything. How about that? But even if we did, what would it mean? We can do better than this. Let's see how our ancestors did it. This seems very strange to modernists, by the way. Why would you look at the way that people who didn't even know about bacteria, how they thought about anything?
Can I retract a statement?
Yeah.
So I said that it started with the Great War.
Yeah.
But America's considered to be America's greatest philosophers were the pragmatists, John Dewey, Charles Peirce, and we get a lot of our thought from them. And their belief, at least Charles Peirce, was that we should consider things, objects, whatever value they have is the effects they have.
Yes.
However they serve our purposes,
right.
However we conceive of it, that bring about some impact, that is all we know of it.
Right.
Purely naturalistic explanation.
Yeah.
And that's in 1883. He's writing that. So long before the Great War.
Yeah. Okay. And the question of why isn't one that they were really all that interested in.
No.
All right. So, how did our ancestors see it? They did not see the natural and supernatural as separate. Bottom line up front, Orthodox Christians do not see the natural and the supernatural as separate. It's just the world. Some things to the ancients were visible and some things were invisible. But just like we can't see radiation, atoms, or gravity, but we know they're part of reality, so it was with our ancestors for the invisible things. And here I'm going to quote him. This idea that the physical and spiritual are not separable has a few important implications. If we say that the physical and the spiritual have to go together, then what we're really saying is that there is a spiritual quality to everything physical and a physical quality to everything spiritual. Asterisk with the exception of the triune God. Right? Okay? This means, among other things, that physical objects and actions can have intrinsic meaning. All right. Now, he gives the example of what if someone just drew two lines, just like that, right? It's just two lines, right? Is it just two lines, though? It's a cross. Now, first of all, like this, these two lines. So when they cross like this. So you have a cross. And is that just two lines? What does it remind you of? Does it have meaning to you? Yes, because we know the story of the cross, right? Oh, but there's even more than that, right? We would say that that's just a subjective. That just means it has resonance for me. No, what we say is that this is part of something, it's part of the primal substructure of reality, right? That the cross has a definite spiritual dimension. And this exists even if people don't recognize it. Even if no one notices it, this has an effect. And he points to mythology to show us that this really was baked in, that he's not just making stuff up. Think about the legend of the vampire, right? How do you turn a vampire away, Amber?
Talk about the stake with the cross.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
A cross,
and
right.
everything.
Garlic cross. I know, there's a whole legend, right? But the cross, right?
Okay.
The cross. Did the person holding it have to believe? No, that came later. That's a modern deal, right? Oh, you can use any object as long as you believe. Nah! No, it was a cross. That's what the mythology was, the cross, because the vampire was animated by evil, right? So something good thrust at it, it has its own power. Okay. Now you can say, Father, that's just a story. I know, but it's a story that had resonance at a certain time because it matched the way that they understood the world. All right. The cross has cosmic significance. And this is true regardless of whether people recognize it as such. He uses the word enchanted, right? We live in an enchanted world, right? I drive some people crazy because I've said there's magic in the world, right? People think that I'm talking about spells, right? No, I'm not. That's illegal. You're not allowed to do spells, right? There's a huge temptation for pagans becoming Christians. Every single culture, they try to enspell God and angels and so on. Don't do it. It's bad. Okay. What I'm saying is that everything has a spiritual dimension. And it's more than just my feeling about it. So I have a very, I love this cup. You know why I love this cup? Because this cup gives me the second life-giving elixir of Sunday morning. Right? Not the primal one. This is just the physical one, right? No, it's not just physical, right? Why do I love this cup? Because I haven't had coffee all morning. And then at about noon, I finally make it over to the kitchen, and I have coffee in this cup, right? Okay, so that's why it's warm and fuzzy to me. But you know what? You may have a different attitude towards this cup. You may have somebody in your childhood may have taken a cup and bumped it across your head. So every time you see one of these cups, it causes you anxiety, right? I'm not talking about. That's not what I'm talking about. Things have intrinsic value, not just based on our opinions of them, but based on them being made and being real. Okay. All right. Another way of describing this is in terms of story. We have to be careful with this because one of the things that stories do is it tells us what things have meaning. And sometimes in our modern view, we just think, like with the cross or with the coffee cup, that it just tells us what things we should have warm fuzzies about, right? And because we have the same stories, we have warm fuzzies about our flag, our Constitution, or whatever it is that your culture leads you to have warm fuzzies about. I don't know what it is, right? But that's not what we're saying. When I'm saying we're part of the grand story, what's the story I'm talking about, Subdeacon? What's the grand story? The story. Yes, the arc of salvation, the economy of salvation, the history of mankind, the history of creation, right? Is this one huge narrative, right? And it doesn't just describe the things that should matter, although it does, right? It because you could make up a story. I think this happens, and then everybody falls in love with its themes, right? And all of a sudden, you've got a new culture that has those things as resonances. Pop songs and so on can get silly that way, right? But the story that we are a part of is the one that describes how God has infused the world with himself. All right. We're going to come out at this several different ways, so don't worry about it. All right. Stories are excellent at conveying meaning. This is why some stories are said to be true, even though they're obviously fiction. Another thing that drives people crazy. some fiction is more true than any history book. Okay. Can you think of any fiction story that just hit you and you're like, man, I just learned something about how the world really works? Right? Have you read any fiction that was that good? I have. Flannery O'Connor, man, The River.
Michael Crichton.
Michael Crichton does it for you? Yeah, okay.
What about movies?
Yeah.
Good Will Hunting.
Good Will Hunting. Okay, so what truth did that teach
So
you?
Matt Damon, he knows like everything, like objectively. Like he
Yeah.
can quote books, he can solve crazy mathematical equations that nobody else can. He goes to all these therapists, and all these therapists try to dig into him to figure out what it is. Then he gets to Robin Williams. And Robin Williams, he gets it despite Robin Williams, and then he comes back, and Robin Williams kind of says, you know what I learned? You're just a kid. You can sit here and quote Michelangelo. You know what he did in his life. Have you ever seen the Sistine Chapel? You ever been inside of it? Do you know what it's like to wake up next? He's like, I don't doubt you've ever been with a bunch of women. Have you ever woken up next to one after 20 years and been genuinely happy you're with one? And then his whole world just crashes.
Right.
He realizes he's right. He's like, yeah, I know all this stuff objectively.
Yes.
But I'm too scared to experience it subjectively. So I hide myself from it. And that's the breakthrough. And then you got the guy on one end of him who wants him to be this great scientist, this mathematician. And Robin Williams is like, he's not ready yet.
Yeah.
You're not respecting his person. He's not ready for this. He's got to develop. And that's the objective manipulation versus the personal.
I love it.
Yeah, anyways, it's very great. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's very, very good.
And one of the reasons why I love science fiction and fantasy is because a good author can create a world in such a way that brings a certain idea or revelation into kind of just brilliant focus, right? In a way that just real life, it's harder to see it. But then once you know it, once you have that faculty of seeing that virtue or whatever it is, then it's there. Then it's there. Then you can see it. Right. And this is why.
That still will be objectivity. Just because you see it don't mean that it's your perception of what you're seeing. I may not see it, so my perception is going to be different.
I know. Well, in this case, you have growing to do. Right? Yeah. So, and that's where we're headed. And the rest of the book, really, is to say, how does this work? And, well, let me get into it, because that's where we're headed, Scott. And I'm probably taking too much time. I am. Oh, forgive me. Okay, so what about objectivity? Isn't this biased? That's what you just said, right? It's right here in my thing. Isn't it subjective? Yes, it's certainly biased. There's no doubt that stories are biased. They have an agenda, trying to convince you of certain things. They point out some things at the expense of others. It's biased, but it's only subjective. It's only subjective because our perception of the world is incomplete and often wrong. So, what we'll try to do is, in this world of subjectivity, even though we know that there's a reality that we're working towards, we still end up asserting our will to try to prove that our new revelation is correct. Yeah.
Father, would you say that objectivity is one of the great modern lies, considering all that stuff like grew out of the Reformation and then the Enlightenment, all that Enlightenment thinking has kind of led to our secular way of life? And
I know many people say that. I think that's exaggerated. I think within a certain domain, you want to have that kind of objectivity. The problem is that has become the worldview, and that can't be allowed to happen. I want my doctor, I want my engineers, my scientists, right, to operate according to data and measurements. Okay? But they don't have anything special to say about meaning. Right?
I don't even know how they're still going to have an agenda, whether they are thinking, you know what I'm saying? Like,
right, but you can't.
Or even
conclusion
perceptions.
they come to would be like, your life is basically not worth living, so you should have to be euthanized.
Right, and that's them bringing right. That's not data. That's
So
them.
what they do with that data.
But that kind of can be data.
No, it's not. No, because they have, remember, all data can do is tell you how things work. It can't give meaning. And they have snuck in this idea that a difficult life is not worth living. That's debatable. They don't have any expertise on that.
Right.
Well, the one can be that data is not really objective either, because then studies that show a lot of these peer-reviewed papers are
No,
based
come on, Mason. No, stop. So yes, it is true that in our fallen world, the whole system is in danger of collapsing. Yes, that's true. And what he's saying is right. But that's not an attack on the goal of objectivity in scientific research.
I think in a perfect world, that's it's true, but we don't live in a perfect world.
Oh, no, you can clean up academia. Mason, you can clean up academia. Peer review, discernment, because all peer review is discernment of peers. I expect that from y'all. If we're going to figure out something, then I'm going to tell you what I think and why, as clearly as I can, and then you are going to do the same. That's the peer review system. But it's been perverted. It's been perverted because people have cheated and they have falsified data.
There will always be a serpent in the garden.
But the problem that Mason is pointing out is that it's so pervasive that it threatens to undermine the whole enterprise. And some people are like, good riddance, right? Where I'm like...
No, not necessarily. I agree with you, Father, about it's important in engineering and science, things like that, to have objective data, but when you introduce the human element, then you get all kinds of sinful acts of people making up data to further their own careers and make a name for themselves.
It's true.
That is corrupt.
And Mason, this is something that even comes into the church. Even comes into the church. So we have to be wise as serpents. And, this is where sunshine is the best remedy, right? You've got to be open. When somebody wants to hide something's going on.
So what happens where we are now, where people know they're lying, they don't care anyway?
Yeah. That's sick. That's a sickness, isn't it, Mason? Or still the one, sorry.
For every liar, there's 1,000 people telling the truth. They're just not as loud.
Well, and our algorithm does magnify. Okay, so let me. I do have more. I really do want to take us through pizza.
With pineapple?
I want us to go beyond thinking about subjective and objective, right? Because it could end up being just, look, I've watched all the right movies, I've read all the right books, so now I understand things correctly, and I'm going to assert my will, and I'm going to assert my authority over you, right? That's just another way of the world. That's materialism, y'all. That's not the way we're supposed to be going. So let's figure out how we can do it better. All right? So y'all get objective versus subjective? Objective is like if I'm describing a pizza, the object of the pizza is the crust, its ingredients, how it was baked, the toppings, the spices. You can measure how certain things interact with the olfactory system and so on, right? That's fairly objective. Subjective is, having hot pepper on your pizza really makes it better. Anchovies is the best thing to put on any pizza, right? It's obviously the best. That's why America is trying to keep us from putting anchovy on our pizza, because America is fallen.
And wives.
That's what it is.
Right, so that's subjective. Subjective is we prefer certain kinds of bread, certain spices and toppings. So we can argue about what belongs on a pizza or how it should be prepared, but it's easy to come to agreement on what pizza actually is. The problem with that kind of dichotomy is that it misses the point on value. Value really does then become a matter of taste. Right? And this is what C.S. Lewis is warning against in The Abolition of Man. It can't just be a matter of taste. So why? So it leads to disaster, and it also can't describe the world the way it really is. Why does it lead to disaster to think in this way? Well, pizza's one thing. Disagreeing about pizzas is okay. And, perhaps if you bring home the wrong pizza and you put it in front of your kids, right, it could lead to a tantrum. Been there, done that, right?
But I get more pizza.
But then we got more pizza, right? Okay. But what if the thing being described is something like human life or like someone else's freedom? Okay? How can you say that something is wrong? Right? No, sorry. Okay, so do you see why subjectivism, really becomes an assertion of will, and that doesn't lead us to necessarily a good thing, right? It leads to the wrong answer because it fails to appreciate that everything has intrinsic value, even pizza without anchovies. Okay, and this is because it has being. There is nothing that can be that does not have value because everything that is connected with the source of value. I'm getting theological on you. Everything was made by and through God and receives its continuous form through His active energy. There is nothing that exists that does not have value, that does not have some intrinsic good in it.
So we take
Prove me wrong.
We take our subjective selves and participate in the objective, which is God.
Right, and then our subjective begins to match the truth. Yeah.
So what about things created by man through our own will, like say AI, things like that, or other nefarious things people conjured up through their own creativity?
Have you heard the joke, make your own dirt? Have you heard this joke?
Right.
Y'all know that? Do I have to tell the joke now that I'm giving you the punchline? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, make your own dirt, God says to the scientist, right? AI can become a tool of certainly chaos. Anyway, so here's what I want to end with is personal knowledge. Okay, another step. So we've talked about the steps of admitting that there's a moral dimension to things that matters, that God somehow defines this moral good. And then that there's a need to move beyond concepts like objectivity and subjectivity if we're going to get to things as they really are. Here's how we're going to get to things as they really are in Holy Orthodoxy. Look at knowledge that is gained personally from the inside through relationships. All right? Think about relationships. If I want to understand you, I can create a profile of you. Right, I can go on, one of these websites and collect all your grocery card data and all your tracking data, and I can figure out a profile of you, right? But is that really you? The way to really get to know somebody is to spend time with them, right, and to do things that are meaningful together. Right? Are you still close to all the people that you suffered with in Germany?
We stay in contact, but we're not close.
You're not close, but you know them very well, don't you?
Yeah, I can call them.
You know them. Yeah. Okay, maybe that's why you don't want to stay in contact with them. You know them. Yeah. So if you want to know somebody, you have to spend time with them, and this is more than just collecting data, right? As a social scientist, that's my first thing. Is I'm like, well, all you're doing is you're around them more, so you're collecting more data, so you can make sense of it. But there's something else that's going on. And it allows us also to, where we're heading is that since God is the source of all meaning, we need to get to know Him. And He's a person, right? So that's where we're going. But if I want to get to know Mason, it's going to take a while for me to see him as he really is. Why? You may not know this, but I have a prejudice against people who grow better beards than I do. And so that prejudice makes me a little anxious, so I'm going to notice the bad things about Mason and miss the good things about him. Because his beard's better than mine. Sorry. And you still have hair. How's that even fair? Right?
Great hair.
I'm kidding, but you see what I mean? So have you ever spent time with somebody, and usually it goes this way, and then you find out they didn't even know you. They just completely misunderstood who you are. And it came out because you said something and they completely misinterpreted it. They gave it the very worst possible understanding that wasn't what you meant.
This is why marriages are so hard. We don't really know anybody the way our spouses know us and we know our spouses.
Right.
I mean, a lot of our relationships are superficial.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They just see part of us in a certain compartment. But with your spouse, it's everything.
I think,
you know what I mean?
yes.
It's like,
and a good marriage,
it's hard.
a good marriage is a path to holiness for this reason, in part, right? What are some things that keep us from seeing our neighbor or our spouse as they really are, right? Past trauma that we haven't dealt with, prejudices, all of these things can cause it to malfunction, right? Vices will cause us to missee people. If I'm an angry man, I'm going to see things that you do. Can't believe you're sitting like that. You're doing that just to make me mad.
Yes, I am.
Now he's an angry side.
Yeah, right. If you're angry, you notice things that are going to feed your angry. If you're an anxious person, everything that you notice is going to you're going to notice things that make you anxious, right? Okay, so if we're going to see somebody clearly, we need to deal with our crap, right? And in the meantime, at least admit that we're not seeing things as clearly as our ego tells us we are, right? This is a huge part of discernment. It's a huge part of Orthodox spirituality, is the path of healing from your crap so that you can see people with love.
It takes humility.
What's that?
Taking care of the beam in your own.
The beam in your own eye. Right. Okay, so here's how he puts it. The practice of virtue is therefore an essential element in seeking knowledge and the ultimate truth of things. Why? Because reality is participatory. Or to put it more simply, if you're a bad person, you're also going to be a bad friend. If you're jealous, resentful, petty, or arrogant, you're going to have a hard time building a relationship with anyone to the extent that those impulses control your life. To have better relationships, you have to be a better person. And if truth itself is a person, you're only going to be able to know truth to the extent that you're able to have a relationship with him. Y'all, that's theology. That's what we're talking about. That's why we're here. Because I'm tired of doing things poorly. I want to do things well. And in Christ it's possible. Why is it possible? Why is it sin that keeps me from being good? Right? This explains it. Because it clouds my vision. It hampers my ability to love. It hampers my ability to be loved. So in summary, the physical and spiritual world are inseparable, and this means that everything has meaning. We learn that meaning through participation. This involves both intellectual and moral growth. So how does that work? Benjamin Harris is going to explain it to you next week, right? All right, now I'm surprised. So that's we're done. So I'm going to turn this off so y'all can ask me the hard question. Well, that's it for today. If you liked what you heard, give us a shout or share some love with a good review. I'd love to hear from you. You can also check out my other podcast at Ancient Faith Radio, Good Guys Wear Black. Until next time, Godspeed.